calling all sort of out, newly out, or fully out lesbians. We are going to Provincetown.
Wing Women Weekend, October 16th to 20th, 2024, is your opportunity to join our crew and enjoy Provincetown's annual Women's Week.
One of the biggest challenges we hear from the lesbians we work with, especially those of us new to this community, is how intimidating it can be to connect with other LGBTQIA plus women and to find that all-important queer community.
I know, and you all want to be connected to the community so much and to meet new queer friends. And, hey, you never know, maybe even meet somebody special. But we can also know that it can be super intimidating to do these things alone.
So let us be your co-pilots as we enjoy some amazing activities in Provincetown, one of the gayest small towns in America, during their annual event for queer women of all ages.
Enjoy meeting new friends with us as your wing women.
It's the queer event of the year you won't want to miss.
Details at www.wingwomenweekend.com. That's wingwomenweekend.com.
Hey queer friends, are you ready to be inspired? Welcome to Season 5 of Coming Out and Beyond, a podcast that shares stories from the LGBTQIA plus community. Here's your host, Anne-Marie Zanzal.
Hi, this is Anne-Marie Zanzal, and I am very excited to welcome Dr. Andreya Jones and Angie Zimmerman to the show today. Dr. Jones is a doctor of clinical sexology and a AASECT certified sex therapist who owns a private practice in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. Angie Zimmerman is a certified sex and relationship coach, an animal communicator, a certified cuddle therapist, and a Reiki Level 2 practitioner. Angie and Andreya, who both identify as pansexual, are engaged to be married later this year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So Andreya came out later in life, and she's been navigating how different this life is from evangelical world she was raised in. She was born and raised most of her life in Papua New Guinea, where her parents were missionaries. Andreya started deconstructing in 2019, and she wrote her dissertation for her PhD on the negative sexual effects on women who've lived through and were exposed to evangelical Christian purity culture. Andreya has written a book for therapists and clinicians based on her dissertation, which will be published later this year or early next year. And Angie knows early on that she didn't fit into the societal and cultural norms of heterosexuality. She spent decades of her life trying to fit into the lesbian community, only to discover there was just as much division for a bisexual, pansexual woman in the gay community as it is in the hetero community. Angie has been on a continuous journey of exploring her sexuality. This led her into a midlife career change to pursue helping others with the same struggle. She now works at Andreya's practice as a sex and relationship coach. As a couple, they've found tremendous healing from their childhood sexual trauma in the practice of kink and BDSM. In the process of coming out and choosing each other, they lost the support and respect of family and friends. However, they are truly grateful for the chosen family they have built. They live in Pennsylvania with their 2 human children, 4 furry children, and 1 very sweet bearded dragon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to talk to you, and I have so many questions. So the first thing I would love to hear is your stories. And I would invite one of you to go first.
Okay, I'll go first.
Cool.
So I was raised with a sister and 3 stepbrothers, a blended family very early on. And I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. And as a child on weekends, my grandparents and my aunt and uncle. And my grandfather was one of 10, and they all had a family farm. And so I connected with animals very early on in life. Animals were sort of my safe place. I had a lot of childhood sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And so animals became a safe haven for me. And so I learned really early on how to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that became really an avenue of healing for me as an adult. So I went to college for special education. I worked in the field as I was going to college and got burnt out very quickly. So I kind of went into the world of animals at that time. I started a pet sitting business. I started dog training. And all that time, I was really exploring my sexuality and exploring women and men and everything in between, and had a lot of trouble finding a place, finding a home. And when I did settle with into the lesbian community, um, I felt like I still needed to conform and fit into a certain ideal because I was very athletic as a kid. I was a tomboy, and but I really had this internal feminine side that I wanted to express.
Mm-hmm.
And that really wasn't accepted in the community that I was in. And so I conformed, and each partner I was with, I became what they wanted me to be,
Mm-hmm.
and suppressed the desire to also be with men, and the desire to even early on have any kind of intimacy that resembled heterosexual sex.
Mm-hmm.
So really,
I'm, I'm really curious, what lesbian community were you in?
Central Pennsylvania.
Huh? Because I
Yeah,
have not found that. So I'm just but I completely honor and value what you're saying. So
yeah,
it sounds like there was really a norm of what people were supposed to be
absolutely.
as a
Yes.
lesbian. And as sort of femme presenting, you didn't really fit into that norm. And then what ended up happening is that you ended up conforming to what you wanted other people to, or what you
Yes.
thought other people needed.
Yeah. Early on, I presented as feminine, and um, I, I mean, it was my choice, but to fit in, and I kind of butched myself. I
Mm-hmm.
became, cut my hair off. I had long permed hair, makeup, nails, everything, and I stopped doing that, cut my hair off, just became what others wanted, which
Mm-hmm.
I've been working on, in therapy my whole life. So,
Mm-hmm.
being who I truly and authentically am, regardless.
Mhm,
So,
mhm, mhm.
and I'm finally there, but yeah.
All right. I usually don't do this, but I have a question of curiosity.
Okay.
How much do you think that it was people wanting you to conform? And how much do you think it's you conforming just because you were young? We all tend to do that when we're in our
Oh,
20s, teens and 20s
absolutely.
and stuff like that. I mean, if you had decided to stand out as just who you were at that point, do you think you would have had rejection at that point?
Yes. Because
Yeah.
when I did try to do that, there was rejection.
I'm sorry.
It's like,
That's
are you sure you're gay enough? Are you sure you're lesbian? Because,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
yeah.
You had a gatekeeper. God, those gatekeepers, they think they can tell anybody.
They do.
Well, when you're new too, and you're still questioning your sexuality, and somebody keeps the gate
Mhm.
and says, you've slept with a man, you can't be a lesbian," or "You've
Right.
done this, you can't be a lesbian."
Right.
It's horrible,
Yeah.
but it's a gatekeeper.
It is.
It's like somebody who think that they can name your sexuality, and the only person that can name Angie's sexuality is you.
Right.
But when you're new in this journey, you don't know that.
Right.
You're still looking for validation from others to say,
Right.
"Oh yeah, you're part of us."
Yeah.
So
And the belonging. I just wanted to fit in somewhere because
yeah.
I never felt like I fit in anywhere. So
So when you finally embraced that you were pansexual, how did that, do you feel like you fit in now?
I do. Well, I feel like I don't need to fit in anymore.
Ah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I don't need to fit in anywhere. I'm comfortable in my skin. I'm comfortable in who I am. I'm
Mm-hmm.
comfortable knowing that even like that may change in a year,
Mm-hmm.
that may change in a month. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm finally comfortable knowing that who I am is enough. And
Mm-hmm.
the people around me, if they don't see that, then they're, I thank them and they're welcome to move on.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I really love that. That's what I, that was such a wonderful answer about like, I'm just comfortable with who I am. I don't need to fit in. It's not important. So, did I give you enough space for you to finish your story? Do you
Uh,
want to add anything else to it?
I can add in as we go.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, Jeria, let's hear your story.
So I was born in Papua New Guinea. Um, and my parents are, well, they just retired, but they were missionaries for over 40 years. And so I grew up all over the world. I lived in Papua New Guinea. We lived in Senegal, West Africa. We lived in Quebec, Canada, and just kind of bebopped all over. But I grew up in a very conservative evangelical Christian community of about 1,000 people on a compound that was completely like fenced in, guards walking the fence, like you couldn't get in, you couldn't get out kind of thing.
Where was this? Was this in New
In
Guinea?
Papua,
Yeah.
yeah, in Papua New Guinea. Yeah. And so I grew up in that world. And I was taught that, if you were gay, if you were anything other than heterosexual, monogamous, like you would go to hell. And so what was really interesting is that well, first of all, my first sexual abuse, I have a significant sexual abuse history, but the first person I remember sexually abusing me was female.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember when I was in middle school and I started to have feelings for women, I thought, oh, it's because of
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
abuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kind of suppressed all of those feelings. I had really close relationships with girls and I would have feelings for them, but then I would just kind of suppress those and say, oh, we're just good friends, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when I was 18 and I graduated from high school, I moved to America, which was total culture shock,
I
right?
bet it was. From 1,000-person compound to, yeah.
Yeah. And so I went to this Christian college outside of Philadelphia, and I was going for social work. And in one of my first social work classes, they were talking about people who are LGBT. And I completely innocently and honestly raised my hand. And I was like, well, don't people who are gay go to hell? And everyone in the class looked at me like I was absolutely insane, but I had never met anyone who was part of the LGBT community. That was what I was taught. Like I literally didn't know anything else. And the head of the social work department told me that I would never ever get a degree from that university because of my beliefs. And so I left that school because I was like, I want to be a social worker. I don't understand. Um,
Did
but
they, I'm curious, did they like try to help you see like
no,
what was wrong by saying that or give you a little guidance or I mean, my goodness, like these people are going to be go on to be licensed clinical social workers. Do you think maybe somebody could have asked you like, hey, why are you saying that? I'm curious.
right. Nobody, like, first of all, I'm in total culture shock. I don't understand anyone my age, right? I didn't grow up with television. Like I literally didn't have any of this stuff. And so nobody sat down and said, Drea, like, who are you? Where are you coming from? What were you taught? Like nobody was willing to educate me at all. They just basically said, you're never going to pass any social work classes if you stay here. And so I left. I actually went to 4 different colleges because for missionary kids, finding where you belong when you go back to your like home country that wasn't home, it's you see a lot of missionary kids that kind of like go to different places and they're constantly trying to find where they belong. And so that's where I came from, right? And so over all of these years, um, I have deconstructed from what I was taught. I've realized that I really grew up in a cult. I've done tons of reading, tons of research, tons of therapy. And so I decided that, you know, all of these feelings I had for women, even though I experimented with women in college and I really enjoyed that, I still had this belief that like the fairy tale of you meet this man, you marry him, you have 2 children, and you're happy forever. Like God is going to give you this beautiful life. So I followed it, right? So I picked a man, I married the man, I had the 2 children that are wonderful. But I couldn't find that joy, right? Or that fulfillment. The happily ever after didn't come, right? And I kept thinking, well, if I work harder, if I try harder, if I, you know, go to more therapy, like I'm going to make this happen. And so what's interesting is I was listening to one of the talks that you had given in the past and how you talked about how a lot of people try opening their marriages, right? And go into polyamory. Well, you know, I'm a certified sex therapist. I'm getting my PhD in clinical sexology at that point. Like I just dedicated my life to helping other people in their sexual journeys. And so I worked with a lot of people in the lifestyle, right? And I thought maybe that's what it is for me. Like maybe it's polyamory. So just like you talked about in your talk, like we opened our marriage, we tried it, and with Angie was my partner, and it bombed, right? Totally bombed. And
I appreciate you saying that so much, because really
it's awful.
maybe 5% of the time it works. And
right.
and it has to, I am assuming the 5% are people who are really emotionally closed up, because it's hard to make that work. And you got, okay, finish up.
And what we see with people in, you know, who actually do the lifestyle or go into polyamory and do it beautifully is because they are actually polyamorous.
Right.
So many couples that I work with, and myself included, is we thought, well, maybe this will help. But it doesn't help if that's not who you naturally are. And so my husband at the time, you know, said that he was totally on board. Like we did everything right. I did all the research. He didn't, but I did. And it just didn't go well, right? And
Of course not, because he didn't do any of the research either.
Didn't read any of the books, nothing, right? So he filed for divorce on Mother's Day 2 years ago, and I'm still in the middle of a really, really awful divorce. But through all of that, you know, Angie and I have been together, and I'm finally living my authentic self, and I've embraced who I am. And it's crazy how, like, I thought this one path was going to lead to the happily ever after fairy tale, and it's the complete opposite. But I'm finally happy, right? I have a purpose. I feel fulfilled. I'm with a partner that genuinely gets me and loves me for who I am and not just what I can do for them. So yeah, that's kind of my whole little journey from gay people go to hell to I am literally getting married to a woman.
You know, it's interesting because I often reflect on that too, is because I checked all the boxes, I did everything right, I was married, I had 4 kids, I was blah blah, all that stuff. And I still reflect on like how that was supposed to bring me happiness and fulfillment. And now I live with my wife and 2 dogs, and my kids are grown, you know, so they're not going to live with us anyway. And like how much more happy and fulfilled I feel this way. And it's a quieter life in a lot of ways, because, you know, when you have 4 kids, you run around like a chicken with your head cut off. You know, and I think that's also that time of my life has ended as well, you know, but it's a much quieter life. And I'm really like sort of stunned by the contentment. Like I have, like when I was married to my ex-husband, I spent a lot of time thinking about leaving. And like a lot of women coming out later, I thought spent a lot of time wondering if I was gay.
Yeah.
And like that took up a lot of space in my head. And now that I don't have to think about those things anymore, because I am, like I feel like the sense of contentment that I never felt when I was married. And I understand that. I really do.
It's like you can breathe. Like
Yeah.
every day you just wake up and you can breathe instead of having to consciously think about, okay, now breathe in, now breathe out. Like you can do this. That doesn't happen anymore. It's just kind of like you're just living the way you're supposed to live.
Right. I have a great question for Angie. I've never had somebody who has been on the other side of an open relationship. So I'm going to grab you while I can. So one of the things that we teach in like Lotus group coaching is that, open marriages, I find that a lot of times open marriages is the response, is a grief response, and people are bargaining to try to keep their marriages alive, even though, one of them's gay or whatever reason. And I do believe, like, just like you say, Dre, that, polyamory is an orientation. It's just there are people that are very naturally oriented towards that, and then there's people trying to save their marriages. So, Angie, like, so what we say is that, first of all, you're not in a space to open up your marriage when you're in such crisis mode, which people are when one of the spouses comes out as gay. And the other thing we say is you are inviting a whole nother person into your marriage who
Right.
has thoughts and feelings and desires and ideas of their own. Like, couples do not think about you. I'm just going to say you or what you represent. They're not thinking about the other person that they're going to. So what was that like for you? As you're trying, you find this woman, you're falling in love with her, she's still married. Like, how was that for you? And how did it, if you feel comfortable answering, how did it make you feel?
I felt a lot of shame because I was in a long-term relationship. I was partnered for I was with her for 18 years. So when Dre and I met, we met professionally because she had hired me to come do an animal communication for her dog that had passed. So that's how we met. And the day that we met, well, let me answer your question first before I get into all that. So it was really difficult because I had been raised in the idea of toxic monogamy, and it was, I had always felt from a teenager, from really early on in high school, I'd always felt like, how can one person meet all my needs? Like when I grow up, that feels like I'm being set up to fail. Like when I grow up, how can I find one person that can meet all my needs? So I realized, like in my mid to late 40s, that I've always thought in a polyamorous way of mind. Like there's not one person that can meet all this. And so in the relationship that I was in, my partner and I at the time had actually opened up before I started dating Drea. And I was dating a woman long distance, and my partner and I were considering dating another woman that was local, and there was another woman that she wanted to date. So we were in the mindset. Again, I was the one doing all the research and the reading, and she did a little bit, and thought that she understood a lot. Um, and she consented to all of it, like everything we talked about, because like communication is key.
Oh yeah.
Transparency and honesty is key. So when we came into this, with both of our partners consenting. And we came into this saying, because well, I had cheated on every partner before. And that current partner, I was like, I'm not going to do that again. We wanted to do it the right way. So, but being this other piece to a family, basically like a married woman with children, I was like, this is really touchy. This is like, I'm never going to be a priority. Those were things that I thought, like the husband's going to come first, then the kids, probably then the job, and then I'm going to fit somewhere in there. But I was falling so madly in love with her. I was like, I don't want to be number 4, 5, or 6. So I had to work a lot in therapy, but I also had to like really dive into a lot of, how do you deal with jealousy? How do you deal with envy? Like, because he also didn't treat her well, and I could see that. And
She probably couldn't, right?
she couldn't.
Yeah, I
So
get
she
that.
couldn't. And
Yeah.
so that was actually the hardest thing for me was like,
Talk to my wife.
do you know that you deserve this?
My wife and I were dating when I was getting divorced. And so she saw so much that
Yeah.
at the time now I see it, but I couldn't see it. I
Yeah.
just
You can't when you're in it. Yeah. Yeah.
can you consider yourself polyamorous still?
I don't know. That's a great question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a great question. It kind of depends on the day.
Yeah.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, it depends on where I am, where life is, where we are. It depends on, because we're still learning. Like we've been together for 2 years, but we're still learning each other. We're changing,
Mm-hmm.
so we're learning each other as we're changing.
Mm-hmm.
We are raising a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like nothing is constant but change
Yes,
with them.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
navigating our jobs and her running her business, and so it doesn't feel like there is time for anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I think at my core I am poly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it was just that you said, I was falling madly in love, and I was curious about, like, in other relationships, were you okay being third or fourth? If that was the, like, you said I was like not a priority. She was busy,
Mhm.
and I'm falling in love with her. So I'm just curious, like, in other relationships, were you more of a priority?
Um, no. No.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was kind of used to not being a priority.
Well, now you
Yeah.
are.
Right. Now I am. Yeah. Yes.
So, Dre, I'd love to hear about your work and what you do. Um, Purity culture is incredibly so. First of all, tell me about your purity culture in your evangelical cult that you were in, because, like, I've talked to people that had wedding ceremonies, they wore wedding rings, like, I would love to hear what, like, kind of uh ritual that they put you through to for this. I'm just curious.
So definitely raised from very little to believe that I needed to cover my body.
Mm-hmm.
My body could cause any and every man to lust, no matter how old I was. And it was my job to be that gatekeeper, to protect men from stumbling, to protect men from sexually sinning, because, according to them, they just can't help it, right? Because men are so sexual and women are so not, right? Totally not true, but that's what I was taught. And so we did when I got my period, my dad gave me a ring. We talked about saving my body and my virginity for my marriage. We had a group of Americans come over to Papua New Guinea from True Love Waits, and they did this whole like 5-day like ordeal of getting all of us to sign the pledges. And what's interesting, I wrote about this in my book, but like all my friends were signing the pledges, and I pretended to sign it because I didn't want to be weird, but there was no way I was going to sign a piece of paper that I knew I was not going to actually follow through with. And I didn't want to lie to myself. And
How did
so
you know, being steeped in such evangelical Christianity, how did you know you weren't going to keep it? I'm just curious, considering you were really, really sheltered.
yeah, I knew, like, and I don't know if it's because I started being sexually abused as a child or what. I have always been a very sexual person. And I knew, watching all of these marriages that I grew up around where it didn't look like love to me, that I wasn't going to get stuck in a marriage where sex wasn't good or where I wasn't loved, and so I was like, I'm going to go, when I get out of this cult, I'm going to go to America and I'm going to have sex with other people before I decide to get married, even though I knew in my mind it was a sin, right? Like, so I was willing to sin because I wasn't willing to compromise
Mm-hmm.
in my marriage,
How do you
right?
define sin? I'm curious.
Um, I mean, I don't believe in sin now, but at the time it was anything that was against what the leaders told me or what the Bible said, or what I was told the Bible said.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically breaking any of the rules that I grew up with was sin. I just don't believe in it anymore. But so that's why in like high school I refused to sign the piece of paper
Well,
because
good for
I'm
you,
not gonna lie
right?
to myself.
Well, but like, I think that shows an awareness, that a lot of time, it sounds like, I bet this was your queer self that saved you, honestly. Because I think there was a piece of you that knew that you knew you weren't going to do this. But considering, I mean, like considering how you were raised, by all intents and purposes, you should have signed that, being like, I'm going to be a good, like a lot of my clients talk about how when they signed the purity pledge and they had absolutely no problem because they were gay. And so they're looking at boys, they're like, nah, you know. But it's really, I bet it was that piece of you that was queer that was like, hey, I'm not doing this, because queerness is also rebellion too.
Right.
And
Right.
you were going to risk sin
Mhm.
so that you know that you could follow that. So
Yeah.
what you perceived to be a sin at that time.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like I had to wear dresses. I was only allowed to wear pants 1 day a week. I couldn't have any tight clothing, because in Papua New Guinea, your butt and your thighs are the sexual part. It's not your chest, because traditionally women don't wear tops in Papua New Guinea. So like I was taught to constantly be on the lookout for like how I was dressing and how people were viewing my body. And rape is a huge part of the Papua New Guinean culture. It's kind of everywhere. And so I was always like aware of that and worried. And I believed and I was told that like if something happened to me, it would be because of my choices. Right. So what I wore, where I was, who I was talking to, like men cannot help themselves, right? It was my responsibility. And
Well,
so
yeah, like I also know, I mean, that's told to everybody in conservative Christianity, that you're responsible for everybody's actions and feelings as a woman. How did
absolutely.
you, how did you deconstruct that? Because that, one of the reasons I work with women only, or people who identify that comfortable in female spaces, is that there is so much to deconstruct about being born female, and like the messages we received as females, that I just don't have like the space. I just don't have currently have the space to work with men around that, because there's just so much that women have to deconstruct. And like I have heard this time and time again, and unfortunately I'll never be out of business, you'll never be out of business, because this is still being taught. So how
Right.
did you start to deconstruct those messages?
I mean, to be honest, when I got to the States, I just started having a lot of sex with a lot of people. And I found power in like owning my body. And I felt like I was in control of everything. In reality, I look back and I see that I just like allowed men to continue to use me. But like I went the opposite way and was like, well, if I'm gonna have to have sex anyway, or if they're gonna lust after me anyway, I'm gonna be in control of what happens and how it happens and how I look and how all of that stuff. So I did that. And then I also, I mean, honestly, the book that really changed it for me was Leaving the Fold,
Mm-hmm.
by Marlene Winnell.
Mm-hmm.
And when this is so funny. I was at a swingers resort in Cancun
Mm-hmm.
with my husband. Everyone's naked at the resort, right? And I'm sitting here reading Leaving the Fold as all, like in this environment. And I'm reading it and I realized, wow, like these are my people. And I have searched my whole life. I think I was 36 at the time. I have searched my whole life to feel like I belong. And as I'm reading about how messed up evangelicalism is and all of the things that I've believed, and I'm letting go and I'm shedding, and I'm surrounded by all these naked people who are just loving each other. That's when I think I finally that was like my big deconstruction moment, was like, I can never go back now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. So that was it. Also, when I was getting my CST, my certification in sex therapy, getting my PhD in clinical sexology, all the classes I had to take, all the people that I met, you know, all of that was helping me deconstruct all of these beliefs and ideas that I had. But one of the things I'm realizing with deconstruction is that it's not really ever over.
Right. It's never over.
Right. And so I thought, like, when I met when Angie and I started dating, we met years before, but when we started dating, I thought, oh, I'm deconstructed, like I'm solid. And all I've found out is that I am nowhere near totally done, and I'm never going to be totally done. This is an everyday journey of, you know, I still find myself having those thoughts of, oh, what if hell is real? And then I'm like, whoa, 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 no, logical brain comes in. No, it's not. But there's still those moments where these thoughts.
Oh, I get that. I understand. I really do. Like, you know, when I first slept with my wife, she was actually the first woman I slept with. And, you know, when we had talked for a long time. So when we finally met each other, you know, we slept together. And I remember I was stunned because, like, I was an incredibly good ally. I'd been an ally for years, blah, 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 blah. And I thought to myself, like, in the beginning, is this sinful?
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Where did this come from? And, you know, within, like, you know, probably 1.2 seconds, I dismissed it. But I still had to go back later and say, okay, where did that come from? Because I don't think it's sinful, like, intellectually, but that was something that was deep inside. It was heart stuff, you know? And there are times, I mean, even now, 8 years out, sometimes I think, God, it'd be so much easier to be straight.
Yep.
It just would be. But then I'm like, and so I think that for, like, you know, 1.2 seconds. And then I'm like, but you're not.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
not.
No.
So, you know, because it is harder to be queer. And so it is. And so, you know, but I understand, because, Dre, I still have those thoughts. And I think I'll have them for the rest of my life. But they're just thoughts. They go. But
right. And one of the things I focus on so much with my clients, and I have to do with myself, is like, a feeling is not a fact.
Right.
So if I have this feeling, this boom, is this sinful? Okay, that's a feeling, but what are the facts, right? Just not panicking when the feeling comes. Let's go to the facts.
Right. One of my mentors in the early part of my chaplaincy career said to me, a feeling is just a feeling. And it was like the most life-changing thing anybody had ever said to me. And so, like, a feeling literally can last 90 seconds at the longest. And, you know, it's just a feeling. It doesn't mean anything. You're just having a feeling. And it takes a long time for people to realize that, right? You know, that, okay, I don't think this is sinful. Like, let's use that as an example. But it's just something that's ingrained in me. It's something from a long time ago. And when I had time later on, because I wasn't going to do it then. Yeah. That's when I deconstructed.
I'm sure she appreciated that.
Yeah, I'm not doing that right now. So tell me, both of you, what kind of work do you do with your clients? What are some of the problems they bring to you? I'm just curious.
So a lot of the vulva owners that I work with really struggle with sexual dysfunction because of the purity culture that they grew up in or were exposed to. And so things like anorgasmia, vaginismus is huge, vulvodynia, fear of sex, not being able to be present during it. Like, all of that is what I work a lot with my vulva owners, and just helping them kind of I like to use a garden idea. So I don't know if you've read Emily Nagoski's work, but she wrote Come As You Are, which is my favorite book of all time for vulva owners. So you should definitely read it. Come As You Are. But she uses this garden what do you call it? Analogy
Yeah.
where like when we're born, we have all this dirt, right? And people begin to plant all these different beliefs and ideas into our garden. And then we become grown-ups and we realize, oh my gosh, I am in control of what stays in my garden. So I can pull things out, I can plant new things in. And so it's one of the things I use with my clients because it's like, okay, tell me all of the messages you received about pleasure, gender, sexuality, like being a woman, all of that stuff, marriage. And let's draw the garden, right? So we draw the garden like, oh, women are here to give men pleasure. Okay, that's a cactus, right? So we put it all in the garden, right? And then we decide which one of these plants or these beliefs do I want to keep or do I want to get rid of? And what do I want to put in? And we just begin to look at, I am in control of what is in my garden, of what gives me life, right? But we have to look at what everyone else has put in there. And so that's one of the ways I do that with my clients. I'm a visual learner. But yeah, I work with a lot of sexual dysfunction and a lot of women who are really unhappy and hate sex. They think they have low libidos, which isn't a thing. Your libido is perfect the way that it is. You just have to learn like how to use it, right? So that's what I do a ton of couples work, lots of vulva owners. I'm kind of like what you said, you don't have the space for penis owners right now. Or male identifying people.
She sends them on me.
I'm realizing that right now in my personal journey, because of my pain, I am not in a space where I am the best therapist for those people.
I get that.
So I'm not taking on any male identifying clients right now because I still have work to do and they deserve the best, right? But yeah, so I'm primarily working with female identifying people.
And Angie, how about you?
So I'm working with male and female and couples. And one of the things that I find a lot is that women don't even think they deserve pleasure. Like they're like owning their pleasure and come in thinking they're broken because they don't like sex or because they don't like penetration or so it's really about, and I'm somatically trained, so I'm trained a little differently. So I incorporate a lot of like body work. So I combine a lot of like body imagery, but like guided imagery, a lot of where are you feeling that in your body, where does, because the body always responds first. There's always a somatic response in the body to most things. So it's really slowing down the thinking, slowing down the reaction, and paying attention to the body. And when we can slow that down, then we can kind of go from there. And that's where a lot of clients are coming in, and as women especially, or women that have had any kind of trauma, really are so disconnected from their bodies and their vulvas. And so one of the things that I absolutely love is getting them reconnected and getting them to have a relationship with their vulva and trust her and create that bond between them. Because there's so many things, messages from childhood, messages from society that tell women that they're just for the male gaze, or they're for someone else's pleasure rather than their own. So it's helping them own their pleasure and know that they deserve pleasure.
This is deeply patriarchal.
Oh my gosh.
So
deeply patriarchal, like
ingrained.
Like it's ingrained. Like it's like I like making women hate other women a lot of times, and also to making women, or being competitive with other women, and also making women, because we're the cause,
right,
for original sin,
right,
cause for everything that I'm trying to get a lucid thought out here. It's like we're taught we get disconnected from our bodies and we're taught that there's something wrong with us because we are
Yes.
female.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Mm-hmm.
there's this image that is continuously portrayed that we should become or live up to, or physically be, or, be the working mom, be the housewife, be the cook, be it all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's impossible.
It is impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible.
It was really interesting for me. So I was 50 when I came out, and I had noticed, not that I cared, but I had noticed that when I was in the straight community, like I was disappearing. 50-year-old women will talk about this. You just start to disappear. People don't pay attention to you, and and it was just an observation, but I also had something to compare it to, because when I came out, I talk about coming out and I was in Technicolor again, because all of a sudden, like, and I was also with my wife who um, didn't have any of the hangups that and had, and so I was appreciated for like who I was, and like I write in the blog piece, like, as the heaviest I've ever been, I'm still the heaviest I've ever been in my life, and like I don't care. And like I have somebody, my wife really loves me and appreciates me. Now there's all kinds of lesbians out there are all kinds of queer people that can be really negative about the body and stuff like that, so everything's a bell curve.
Yeah.
But I happened to meet somebody who just didn't give a shit, and so
Same.
she made me not give a shit. And what really interesting to me is, because my idea of what a beautiful woman was always dictated by the male gaze, because that's what I just knew. And I still appreciate a woman that looks like that. They are pretty. What I found out as somebody who is now, who now has embraced my queerness, is that I like bigger women. Like, I find them very attractive. My wife's bigger. She's, you guys remind me of us, because she's got 7 inches on me. So she's a lot taller. She's got about 75 pounds on me. She's a lot bigger than me. And so I don't care. It's just amazing to me, because I had been so, like, sadly, I was looking at, I was watching videos with my daughter this weekend of her when she was little. I was so tiny. And I was so sad for that girl, me, because I thought I was so fat.
Yeah.
So skinny. And I'm like, oh my God, this is insane that I saw, And so when I got freed from patriarchy and the male gaze and all that stuff like that, it's like wonderful.
Yeah.
I feel really blessed to have.
Yeah. It's very freeing. There's a huge amount of freedom in that.
Yeah, there is. I have some questions about BDSM. Okay.
Okay.
In this, because I find it really interesting. It says in your bio, as a couple, they found tremendously healing from their child sexual traumas in the practice of kink and BDSM. How? I'm just really curious about, because people, people are really curious about that. Some people pursue it, some people don't. Some people just do light stuff. I mean, I've done light stuff, but like, tell me how that works, and tell me, like, yes, the physicalness, but also like the psychologicalness, like how, being in the BDSM kink world, how has that helped you?
So it helped me reclaim myself. It helped me reclaim power. Power was taken away from me at my first memory of age 5. And continued until I was 16. So I was always ashamed that as an adult, a young adult, that I would fantasize about pain. I would fantasize about pain relating to eroticism or sex or any kind of intimacy. And so there was a lot of shame that was built around that because it just wasn't normal. And early on, partners that I had, I would ask them to spank me, or I would ask them to be a little rougher, and they were not comfortable with it. And they were like, there's something wrong with you. So the shame came from outside, the shame came from within the relationship, and the shame came from within me.
Mhm.
And when I finally discovered that there was this whole world of people that felt the same as me, and
Community.
that there was, right, that there was no, that there, that it was okay, that again, I wasn't broken, I didn't
Hmm.
need fixed, and it's okay to be turned on by pain, and it's okay to want other people to cause you pain when it is consensual.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when I consent to it, when I experienced the very first time I experienced like another level of that was at a convention that we were at
Hmm.
in Georgia.
Hmm.
And it was a convention called Sex Down South. And
Hmm.
they had playrooms at night.
Hmm.
And so I volunteered because they asked for volunteers, and I volunteered. And so there was a lot of impact play, there was a lot of different play. Um,
Hmm.
and I sort of had somewhat of an out of a body experience that night. And I realized that this, for me and my healing, has been my missing piece.
Hmm.
That this is absolutely okay. And this is part of who I am. And there's no reason to be ashamed.
Hmm. Hmm.
And part of that lesbian culture that I grew up in also was there was a lot of internal homophobia, so even penetration was not really acceptable.
Oh, I know.
And my body has always, our bodies are built for it. My
Well,
body
it's
always
really,
craved it.
yeah, it's really interesting because my wife and I have friends that are very judgy about that,
Mhm,
and 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 we have friends that are not.
mhm.
And you know, we feel like it's just one aspect of play, like there's nothing wrong with it, like,
Right.
you know, but it's
Yeah.
really interesting. There is strands in the lesbian culture that only tongues and fingers should be used, and
Right.
that's it.
Right.
And then there's strands where it's not, but
Yeah.
there are people like that. And so I think unfortunately you fell into a group where
Yeah.
that's, yeah, and so it made it more shameful for you. Trey,
Right.
how about you? How did you come upon this? Was it with Angie?
Um, it was really in all my education. Like I
Yeah.
was meeting all these people in class that were really into BDSM and kink, and I thought, oh my gosh, again, this was all what I had been told is that, it's bad, it's sinful. And while I am not someone who enjoys receiving
Hmm.
like impact play or receiving, I love to give,
Hmm.
right? So one of the things, because so many things happen to my, take that pain, that rage, that trauma, and like get it out physically on or with Angie, again, in the way she likes it, right? It's so healing for me because I am allowed to express and process all of this stuff that my body has been carrying my whole life in a way that gives her pleasure, and it gives me pleasure because I'm releasing it and moving it through the body.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, she's really the person that has let me play in that world.
Hmm.
Although I learned a lot about before I was with her, but my husband was not interested.
Hmm. Is there a difference between BDSM and kink?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Um,
can you talk about that? Just, I mean, like I literally don't know, so I'm curious.
so kink tends to be finding something that is sexual or erotic that is not typically sexual or erotic, right? So like shoes or people who are aroused by balloons, like something that like your average person would see a balloon and not become aroused or
Hmm.
experience erotic feelings with
Hmm.
that. Kink is like, oh, this thing turns me on, and it's, that's what I use for it. Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the studies are finding we have no control over that.
Yeah.
Like, really have no control over what is arousing to us, I mean, we can control what we do with that arousal, but we can't control what turns us on, what makes us aroused. Like, so people that are aroused by balloons, for
Yeah.
example, like, yeah, they have no control over that. So there's a lot of unfortunately, on the other end of that, there's a lot of kink shaming,
Right.
that happens, and it's like just yeah, don't
Well,
yuck anybody's yum.
well, yeah, right. And also too, like what I love about what you said, Angie, was about like it's the care, it's like, I really believe in the work of Kristen Neff, which is, self-compassion, radical self-compassion,
Mhm.
self-kindness, shared common humanity, and mindfulness. And what I hear there was that shared common humanity is like, oh, these are my people, these,
Yes.
and they get it, where other people might get. So it's really important for all of us to
Mhm.
find our family. And sadly, it sounds like you guys really lost your families when all of this happened. Now, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like your parents, or let's stick to that, like your parents and brothers and sisters and stuff like that.
So when my husband filed for divorce, my family did not know A, I was into women, B, I was in a polyamorous relationship, or C, there was anything going on in my marriage, right? So the day that he informed us all that we were done,
So everything was perfect on the outside.
right. I
Everything.
I had to go to my parents, who are missionaries, and say, polyamory, that's a sin. I'm in a relationship with a woman, that's a sin. And I'm getting divorced, that's a sin. P.S. Could you please come home from Papua New Guinea and take care of me? Right? That was the phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, so many of like my friends, my family, like, although my parents have come around, it's taken a while. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that they love me to the best of their ability. I do
Mm-hmm.
not believe that they agree with my lifestyle choices. Um, it was very painful because I had broken every rule that
Mm-hmm.
I could possibly break. And so, like, my relationship with my one brother, we were like best friends. We don't really have a relationship anymore. My parents, it's always been difficult. It's taken them probably a year and a half, took them a year and a half to come around. And I understand that we're never really going to have that close relationship. We never have, but we're never going to, because I am not living
The life
according,
they want you to live.
according to
Yeah.
their beliefs. Yeah. And then a lot of friends just kind of like,
Well, were you in a very Christian circle when you were married to your husband?
no, I wasn't. Um, which I thought a lot more people would be accepting, because I wasn't in a Christian environment. But a lot of people who weren't, my friends would just kind of wrote me off.
Yeah, that's happened to me. I mean, I was in, I was in a very liberal town. Like they voted Democrat all the time and stuff like that. And when I came out, I lost all the like couples friends we had. Um,
Mm.
the only people that I was still friendly with at that time were the other women going through divorce. And what I realized is that I was in an incredibly heteronormative town. Like
Mm.
people stay married no matter what. You raise your children to be above average. You do all those things, and I was really stunned,
Yeah.
like of how much just rejection, or just,
Mm.
I don't know if it was rejection. Nobody came out and said I reject you, but I just never saw them again,
Yeah.
It's almost like they're worried it's going to rub off on them.
Yes, I think so too.
You know?
Yeah.
I think two things happen. I think that lots of marriages are unhappy.
Yeah.
Yes.
People are like, oh, why can Dre and her husband do this and I can't do it? Or our marriage is so fragile. If I hang around her,
Yeah.
one of us is going to catch it.
Yes.
And I also think that there are a lot of people that are married, or that are in straight marriages, that don't want to be in straight marriages because they're not straight, but they
Mhm.
can't. And it takes a lot of courage to leave a straight marriage.
Oh, it's
And
so much courage.
And
yeah,
those marriages that are not happy, polyamory is a huge threat to those marriages.
yes,
Huge
yes,
threat. Even in the gay community, they're a huge threat.
yeah.
I lost every single friend that I had with in that 18-year relationship
Well, it's
because
really,
of polyamory. Well,
well,
so they say because of polyamory.
well, what it's really interesting is is even in the queer community, people can reject things that they don't understand.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We're
Which
still humans, yeah.
But yeah, we're still humans, which, we've been rejected by the straight world because they don't understand, like, why do you want to sleep with a woman? They just don't get it. And it's not my job to explain it to them. But, but one of the things is that the queer community can be like, if they don't understand polyamory, they're like, and that's it.
Yep.
It's not something that I want to do. I'm a monogamous person, but go at it. I just don't care. It's your life. You need to live your life the way you see fit, and that's it. And, I don't understand it, but it's okay if I don't understand it. It's not, I don't need to understand everything, but I don't need to stop anybody from doing something that brings them joy and happiness. That's,
right.
So
yeah.
How do people find you two lovely people?
So we have a website for my practice, which is andreyajonescounseling.com. We're also on Facebook under Andreya Jones Counseling. So yeah, we are taking new clients. We can work, we do telehealth, we do in person, and we just love helping people on their journeys. So yeah.
Are you licensed in a state where you take any type of insurance for people?
So we do not take any insurance at my practice. Actually, sex therapy is not covered by insurance in this country if you bill it as sex therapy. So a couple years ago, I just stopped doing the whole insurance thing. I personally offer sliding scale for a number of my clients. There's 5 of us that work at my practice. We are all queer. And so we work with people because we believe that everyone should be able to have access to help. But yeah, we don't take insurance.
Okay. So when I was reading your bio, nobody had a coming out song. Come on, there could be.
In my day, it was "I Will Survive," but I'm totally dating myself.
Yeah. Well, just so you guys who are listening to this, Angie looks like she's about 30. So,
oh my God.
You do. You both look really young, but you look like, I figured out you weren't by what.
No, I'm 51.
Yeah, because you were in an 18-year relationship. I was like, when did you start? When you were 12? But so Angie looks incredibly young. So she is dating. You wouldn't have known that. And, so I Will Survive, which is I like when I did Destiny's Child. I'm a survivor.
Yeah.
It felt like I had to survive this. It was really, really hard. And Dre, anything for you?
I think it's called Cinderella's Dead.
Yes.
I think that's more of kind of like my deconstruction song. But it all happened at the same time. So
Well, yeah. A book or movie that really changed your perspective on life.
Leaving the Fold for me changed my life. Yeah.
Feeling Sex by Stacey Haynes.
Okay. And how would you describe your life today?
Ooh.
It's authentic. I just think there's so much peace and just like, again, kind of what I said before, like you can just breathe. We laugh a lot. There's a lot of joy. We are sex nerds, and when you find someone, a partner who like is so passionate about what you're passionate about, it takes it to a whole different level. So we just like geek out all the time about sex.
Like, oh my God, babe, did you see this? Someone just published their dissertation on this. Did you see this? And we're like, oh my God, print it out.
What was it? I didn't see that. What did you say? I'm sorry.
Oh, just like they're in her writing her book, she's doing a lot of research, and like we're doing a lot of it together, and like because I'm totally geeking out on all the new information out there, and it's just like sometimes I'll text her and be like, someone just published their dissertation on purity culture and sex, and she'll be like, print it out. And then we read it
together.
I would love to read those because I'm really fascinated with purity culture and sex, because I think it really has messed up a generation, couple of generations of a couple of generations, and I'm just fascinated by. So send me the copy too.
I will.
Yeah.
So Angie, how would you describe your life today?
Oh, I would say authentic as well. I feel like I've never been more me and accepted as, like, if I want to put a hat on and wear a tank top and shorts, or if I want to do makeup and hair and nails in a dress, like it's all accepted, it's all welcome. And it's like she had described it as beautiful chaos. That it's like it's beautiful chaos, and I get to wake up to the love of my life every day, and and I mean, we dance through the chaos. And yeah.
Well, Angela Zimmerman and Andreya Jones, it was wonderful to talk to you today. I really enjoyed our conversations. I still have a million more questions, but that would make a whole other hour. So thank you so much for
Thank
talking.
you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA plus stories with Anne-Marie Zanzal. New episodes of the Coming Out and Beyond podcast drop every other Friday. You can tune in at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and at annemariezanzal.com. Be sure to hit subscribe when tuning in so you never miss an episode. And for more resources, articles, videos, and a free downloadable guide for coming out later in life, visit annemariezanzal.com.